Let's face it, most people go to the national parks in summer, and many of the parks are at their best in the summer, but summer can be brutal in many of the national parks. So, if you go to the national parks in the summer and you aren't packing these 7 things, then you're missing out. I promise that these things will change your life. They changed mine. Hi, I'm James Ian, and I've written numerous guides and published multiple itineraries for the national parks. And over the years of visiting the national parks, I've learned a thing or two about heat, health, and happiness in the summer, particularly. Packing for national parks trips isn't easy, and packing for a summer trip brings its own challenges. So, I'm going to share with you 7 things that I never even knew about when I first started visiting the national parks, and now I can't live without them. They literally changed my life, and I'll tell you why. If you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe right now. If you're listening somewhere else, follow my podcast to get the episodes as they come out. By sharing these things with you, I'm going to help you have even better summer national parks trips than you already have. Let's take a look right now.
Welcome to National Parks Collecting with James Ian, the national park expert. He's here to help you have the best national parks trips ever. Get tips, discover hidden gems, and learn all you need to know. This is your path to collecting national parks experiences, memories, and maybe even a stamp or two.
Stay to the end where I'll be sharing the number one thing that I cannot live without when I visit the national parks in the summer. A quick note, there are links in the show notes below to purchase the things that I mention. Of course, you don't need to use the links, but they are provided there just as a convenience for you in case that you don't have these things and that you want to get them. No pressure, of course, it's just there if you decide to do that. The first 3 items on my summer vacation packing list for the national parks are about hiking. So if you're not a hiker, you can skip these 3 and go straight to number 4. The first thing on my list literally changed my life. Now, I know that term gets thrown around a lot, and maybe it was more of a game changer than a life changer, but you get the idea. I can't tell you what a difference this makes. I read about these online and I was extremely skeptical when I first did. I was like, what the hell? But I was wrong. What I'm talking about here are cooling neck towels. It's not a travel towel. That's something else. These are a cooling neck towel, and they're a scientific marvel. I've no idea how they work, but they're magic. They're basically like a small cloth that you wet, and then you drape it around your neck, and it stays cool and wet for a couple of hours at least. So imagine hiking in the heat, but your neck is cool, not just wet, but actually cool. It really cools your whole body down. I first tried this when I was hiking in Zion in the summer. It was the only time that I could go, and I wanted to do the hike to Observation Point, which is one of my favorite hikes. Well, actually, it is my favorite hike in the park, but there's very little shade, and it was well over 100 degrees. So I was kind of worried about the heat, and I saw these and I thought, I'm going to give them a go. So I bought a pack of 3 and I wet them and I put them in a Ziploc bag so that they stayed wet, and I wore one, and it was amazing. Like, it was not just wet but cool, and it just cooled down my whole body, and it lasted for almost 3 hours. And then when it was dry, I got the next one out of my Ziploc bag and draped it around my neck. It was amazing. Now, it's not particularly attractive, as you can see, but I highly recommend them. I don't know how they work, but they work. Next up is a hiking umbrella. Now, this is also something that I'd seen online. And I was actually looking to do a rim-to-rim hike in Grand Canyon in one day, which is not really recommended. In the end, I didn't do it. I have hiked the whole Bright Angel Trail, and I ended up hiking North Kaibab Trail down to Roaring Springs, which is as far as the National Park Service recommends safely in one day. And it was the first week of August, so it was very, very hot. So I was looking for ways to stay cool and be safe. In addition to my cooling neck towel, I saw these and I gave it a try, and it was really incredible. It was about 10 to 20 degrees cooler under my umbrella than without it. Now, a hat works to some extent, but imagine having this built-in shade and it just travels around with you all of the time. Really, really amazing. There's a couple of different versions. There are ones that collapse completely, like a tiny little umbrella, and there's ones that stay longer. I recommend the ones that don't collapse because they're stronger. They do come with an attachment that you can hook onto your day pack, which is good because then you've got your hands free to do other things. So I recommend that. They're very light and they have a reflective thing inside, so they're designed to stay cool while you hike. The one downside, I will say that after hiking for multiple hours, that it did sort of pull on my shoulder a little bit. I did feel it after a long time, but it was still totally worth it, in my opinion, because it really did stay much cooler. You want to look at ones that don't weigh very much. The other thing to be aware of or conscious of is that it does take up more space than your body because it's wider, obviously. So you need to just be very respectful when you're passing people on the trail. Make sure that you're not poking them in the eye. If you're hiking on a trail like the Bright Angel Trail that has mules on it, or trails in Bryce Canyon that are also horse trails, for example, then I would put it down at that time so that you're not spooking the animals. But in general, I highly recommend it. If I'm on a super crowded, narrow trail, I won't bother. But if I'm on a trail that's not that busy and it's not shady, then I take it all the time now. It's really, really incredible. Really does make a difference. The other thing to take if you're hiking in the summer are electrolytes. Now, of course, you need to stay well hydrated, but there's actually a thing called hyponatremia. If I've mispronounced that, you can correct me in the comments below. This is overhydration, not underhydration, and it's potentially life-threatening. And it's when you've drunk so much but that you haven't replenished the sodium and the electrolytes in your body. I found this when I was researching the Rim to Rim Trail too, and I got a little scared about it because it's easy enough to hydrate, but you want to make sure that you're replacing the electrolytes in the sodium, and you can do that through salty snacks. Of course, you should always do that, but now I've started to put electrolytes in my water and alternate. You need to find the right balance because everyone has a little bit of a different balance, and you should definitely experiment on shorter, easier hikes than if you're doing a super long, difficult hike in the heat of the summer. But if you are hiking in the heat, then I always do this now. It's a powder, you put it in your water, it's easy to drink. So we've looked at 3 things so far, all related for hiking in the summer. Before we look at more must-haves, some of them for your car, so if you're not a hiker, if you're watching this on my @National Parks Collecting YouTube channel and you haven't already, please like and subscribe below. It really does help. The next thing that I recommend, and people can overlook this, is a parks pass. You can always pay the entrance fee at the park when you go through the gate, assuming that it's open. But if you're planning to visit several national parks a year, or if you're in certain categories of people, then it's actually cheaper to buy a particular pass. Now, I've written a whole article on my parkscollecting.com website, and there's a link in the show notes below that goes into this in more detail. So just a very quick overview. The main pass that you can get if you're a US citizen or resident is the America the Beautiful Pass. And this allows you to enter not only any of the national park sites, but also the national forests. There's the Bureau of Land Management, the Bureau of Reclamation and Army Corps of Engineers, the Fish and Wildlife Service. That's over 2,000 sites, and it's valid for a year. You can buy them at the entrance station to parks, or you can buy them online, which I recommend. If you're a non-resident, so if you're an international visitor, then there is a different version that is more expensive, also mentioned in the guide written on my website. There's also a non-resident fee that's in addition to the regular entrance fees for some of the most popular national parks in the country. So you do need to be aware of that if you're visiting from abroad. Other categories of people who are eligible for special passes are veterans and military members, Gold Star family members. There's also seniors. And if you're a senior, then you can get a 1-year pass or a lifetime pass. It's valid for US citizens or permanent residents who are 62 years or older. And it does allow up to 3 other people in your vehicle to enter. So I highly recommend getting the lifetime pass if you're eligible and intend to visit more than a couple of parks within the rest of your life, basically. There are also passes for persons with disabilities. And then also, if you're a fourth grader, there's a special program that will give fourth graders free national parks passes. Now, fourth graders are actually free anyway, anyone under the age of 16 is, but it will give everyone in their vehicle free access for the year. So if you have a fourth grader or the homeschool equivalent, then I recommend looking into the Every Kid Outdoors program. So take your pass with you, even if you just decide to get a pass for the national park itself that you're visiting. You can, for most of them, actually go to recreation.gov, the official website for the National Park Service, and buy the pass in advance online and then just take a copy with you. And you can often fast track the lines by doing that. So I recommend doing that if you don't want to invest in another pass. The last three items on my list are for national park road trips or fly and drive vacations, because these are things to have in your vehicle. The first one is related to water. Now, you can usually refill your water bottle at visitor centres or sometimes at key trailheads in the national parks, but not always. And for many of the parks, you don't necessarily want to go back once you're deep in the park. Arches, for example, once you've passed the visitors centre, you're along the scenic drive. You don't want to have to go back to fill up your water bottle. So something that I recommend is to keep a large water container in your vehicle, and that way you can use that to top up your individual water bottle so that you can safely go on hikes and you can stay well hydrated throughout your day in the park. The other thing, not related to summer particularly, this is any time actually that you're in the parks, but I really got into these, and that's audio tours or audio guides. And these are super cool actually. There's a few different companies that do them. I really like the action tour guide ones, but they're very similar. You go to their website. You can often get bundles, which are often better if you're planning to go to several national parks, but you can get them for individual parks. And then once you've booked the tour, you get a text or an email with the instructions and a link to download the app along with the passcode. So you download the app, and I recommend doing that before you go while you have good Wi-Fi. When you're there, you actually don't need to use Wi-Fi to play the tour. Some of them will have multiple versions or different versions for different entrances of the tour. You choose the one that's applicable for your particular itinerary. And then when you're in the park, it's interesting. It actually just starts playing automatically once you reach a particular point in the park. It reads using the GPS in your phone. So you do need to have your phone. Your phone needs to be well charged. But you don't need cell service. It doesn't rely on that. It will just start to play automatically as you get to a particular point. And it gives you lots of really interesting information about the park, which I really like, about the history, about the geology, etc. It's kind of the best of both worlds. You get a tour guide, but you're in your own vehicle. You're going at your own pace. You're getting the information, but it's still your trip and it's very flexible. So I recommend them. I really got into them and I get them for all my trips now. What's the number one thing that I recommend taking to the national parks if you're not traveling in an RV? So far today, we have looked at 6 game-changing things to pack on summer trips to the national parks. There's just one more left. Stay to the end where I'll be sharing my favorite one. But before we do, if you're looking for a more complete packing list than just these 7 items, then check out my website. There's a link in the show notes, and there are multiple packing lists there. Some of them for specific parks, like Arches, Acadia, Glacier, Grand Canyon, Grand Teton, Zion, Yellowstone, Bryce Canyon, Mount Rainier. But there's also ones for particular types of trips, like a winter trip or a camping trip or a cabin trip or a road trip or beach camping. So you can choose the packing list that fits your trip. I recommend going there. There's a free downloadable checklist for each of them, so you can use that to make sure that you don't miss anything for your trip. And as I mentioned, there's a link in the show notes below. Now, as promised, what's my number one thing to pack? I love this, and that is a foldable cooler. I always fly and then pick up a rental car and drive. So this is perfect in this situation. If you've driven on a road trip all the way from your home, you may not need this. You can have a much bigger cooler that you can take the whole way. But what I used to do, I would fly, I would get somewhere, I would want to have a cooler in the car because I want to pack a picnic lunch, I want to keep the water cool, I want to buy breakfast and have it the next day on the trail, for example, because I'm often up early in the parks. So I would fly somewhere, buy a disposable cooler, use it, and then throw it away at the end, which is bad, right? It's expensive. I'm wasting money. It's bad for the environment. It was just bad. But I couldn't pack a whole cooler in my luggage on the plane. Then I discovered collapsible coolers. They're so cool because it's fabric. It collapses into a flat thing so it fits in my bag on the plane, and then it constructs into a three-dimensional box that's insulated and designed to stay cool. I use it, and then at the end of the trip, collapse it back and it's flat again. So it was a game changer. It's much better for the environment, much better on my wallet. If you're doing this, if you do a fly and drive vacation and you've always wanted a cooler in your vehicle, but you don't want to carry a big bulky thing on the plane, this is just amazing. I was on a recent trip to Joshua Tree and we would always stop at the gas station, fill it up with ice, get yogurt, get snacks for a picnic, and then spend the entire day in the park. And then at the end of the day, go and get more ice and get ready for the next day. So super convenient. If you want help planning your trip, check the links in the description box below. There's a bunch of planning and booking resources that you can use to plan and book your trip. And keep watching my videos to get even more help so that you can have the best national parks vacations ever. And if you want to get notified about the next episode, subscribe and click below.